What better gift than a Strava craft coffee subscription for one of your loved ones? You can get them all signed up. You can get them all set up to have Strava craft coffee, that CBD rich, tasty coffee, sent to their door every 2, 3, 4, 6, or 8 weeks. And you're going to get 20% off all of those deliveries when you do that. So it's a great deal for you. It's a great gift for them. And you can get everyone, as they say on the Nuggets podcast, honking like a goose. Yes, that is honking like a goose. So you can check them out. Strava Craft Coffee. Use the code DNVR20 to just try it out and get 20% off. Or you can get that subscription set off and get 20% off every single time.
Number one for the one and only DNVR. 2 goes out to Zach, Mace, RK, and the bar. 3 for Mr. B in that old trophy case. Number 4 we're still waiting for. Well, bring on the chase. Out on the field, a mile high, Broncos win is our desire. Couple with a breakfast crew and a friendly orange and blue to the bitter end. Come and join us at the DNVR. We are DNVR.
Welcome in to the DNVR Broncos podcast presented by MSU Denver Online. msudenver.edu/online. Scope out all they have to offer. We're talking 40-plus online and hybrid programs, 750 total classes. They've got everything you need. It's the best way to further your education while working a full-time job. MSU Denver students work twice as many hours as any other Colorado institution. So you can check them out, msudenver.edu/online, to see all they have to offer, and you're going to love it.
My boys, what's up? Happy Thursday, and man, it feels like a Friday, so we got to whip out some tropical shirts. Happy Tropical Thursday, my friends.
Yeah, I did not get this memo, as you can see. I tell this to Allie all the time. I say I'm a creature of habit, and when things change, I need to be reminded, like not just once, but like several times, that things are different this week. So sorry, guys, I missed out.
I'll have your back next week, Ryan. I won't let you forget.
Thanks, Zach.
I don't know. Is there even going to be a Friday show next week? That's going to be Christmas Eve, guys.
Christmas is Friday.
Christmas Day. Christmas
Right.
Eve is Thursday. Yeah, so you'll have to do Hawaii shirt Thursday or day on Thursday if there is a Christmas Eve show.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And I'll give the reminders. Don't you worry.
Yeah.
Thanks, Zach. So normally on a Friday show we'd be doing this, but someone did remind me that we don't have a Friday show when we were making the headline for this show. So that means today we talk about the formula, the game plan for the Broncos to beat the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, Broncos took on the Bills last year with Brandon Allen at quarterback in like just a terrible condition game. Wind was just howling. And it was just an ugly game all around. This year, they get them at home. Weather should be better, but also better is the Buffalo Bills. They're 10-3. They're one of the more exciting teams to watch in the NFL. I mean, when did you ever think you'd be saying that about the Buffalo Bills, especially after they drafted Josh Allen? You know, I was someone who was low on Josh Allen draft stock. I probably have flipped more on Josh Allen than I ever have on any other player. Now he's one of my favorite players to watch. They've got Stephon Diggs in there. And, you know, the one thing I will say about the Bills as their weakness is they don't run the ball very well. So as we kind of build the game plan here, I want to start on the defensive side of the ball. And for me, the number one most important thing on the defensive side of the ball for the Broncos is to keep Josh Allen in the pocket. You have to contain him. Once he gets out of the pocket and starts breaking down the defense, that's when he opens up big play opportunities. That's when you start getting yourself in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and he is very, very good at that. Not only taking off, but buying time. And what you can't do in this game is have Josh Allen buy time. Because, look, you're going into this game with 3 cornerbacks. Count them. 1, 2, 3 cornerbacks. And look, these cornerbacks on your team are a guy that got benched earlier in the season and Michael Ojemudia. And these are just the facts. I really like Michael Ojemudia. You guys know I love this next guy, Devontae Bosby. The Broncos cut him multiple times this year. And then the other guy is a guy that was in the building for the first time yesterday in Nate Hairston. So, I mean, this is tough. You know, you can only ask so much of your cornerback. So, Ryan, I am right there with you because it's not just Josh Allen. It's the weapons that Josh Allen has. Stephon Diggs, the best receiver in the NFL right now. He's playing like that. And then Cole Beasley, maybe the best number 2 receiver in the NFL as well.
Yeah, and unfortunately also, Zach, for countering those cornerbacks or the lack thereof, Buffalo has a template because Carolina probably with another 10 minutes would have won that game last Sunday. And as the game went on, they were exploiting the issues at cornerback and more and more. And that allowed them to put together 4 straight drives that had 58 plus yards, ended in scores. So I'd feel a little bit better about the Broncos' chances if they didn't let up, and if Carolina, Teddy Bridgewater, Robbie Anderson, a much lesser receiving core and passing game overall than the Bills have, if they didn't slice and dice the Broncos the way they did in the second half. Unfortunately, I think Sean McDermott might be looking, and Brian Daboll might be looking at that film and saying, let's come out and do that from the start.
Yeah, I think Cole Beasley is going to be just an absolute whatever analogy you want to use, but just a terror for the Broncos on Sunday. He is so crisp. He's so good at finding the open spots, and he and Josh Allen have such a great relationship that they're working with that with the Broncos not having any stoppers out there. If you had Bryce Callahan and you said, okay, well, you can match him up in the slot or whatever, then you might feel better. But he's just going out there against, like you said, Zach, a guy who's been cut multiple times this year, a guy who's been benched this year, and a guy who just showed up this week. It's gonna be really difficult. So to me, what you have to do is avoid big plays. And that's why I want to contain Josh Allen in the pocket. But, I bring up this game all the time because it's just the one that pops up to me every time we talk about containing quarterbacks in the pocket. It's the Broncos against the Seahawks in the season opener a couple of years ago. And it was Joe Woods and Vance Joseph who put together one of the best game plans I've seen against Russell Wilson, which was, using Derek Wolfe on one side to set the edge. And really having Von Miller either contain on the outside, almost like a spy type of role, where when Russ stepped up, Von stepped up. When Russ stepped out, Von stepped out. Obviously, you don't have Derek Wolfe and Von Miller, but you can kind of, go back, look at that film, and take away from that game how the Broncos kept Russ Wilson from making any plays out of the pocket. I remember one time he tried to get out of the pocket. Von chased him down. It was like a 15-yard sack. So that's what I'm saying. You got to do. You got to keep Josh Allen from extending plays outside of the pocket and finding whether it's Beasley, whether it's Diggs, whether it's someone else down deep. Isaiah McKenzie, who plays a big role on this team. That is, to me, the most important thing. Don't let them score quickly. Make them work for everything. Hopefully you can get some batted balls, that sort of thing, and lock down in the red zone and force field goals because I think they're going to be able to move the ball between the 20s.
How wild would it be if after the game the Broncos win, they contain Josh Allen, do what you're saying, Ryan, and the question's asked, how did you know what to do? And he goes, well, I just learned from Vance Joseph on how to contain these quarterbacks. That would just be hilarious. But no.
What would be more surprising, him saying that or him saying, well, I watched the DNVR Broncos live on Friday and RK was talking about an old game, so I went back and watched the film.
I think there's more of a chance of Mr. Fangio tuning into this right now than him crediting another coach in a game plan. But you're 100% right. The big plays are what has to be contained. If you force Josh Allen to go down the field every single drive, I'll take my chances with that more so than I'll take my chances with him hitting Isaiah McKenzie for 80-yard touchdown. So a key is going to be tackling. And Michael Ojemudia has had his struggles in the past. You may see a lot of playing off. And that means that when Stephon Diggs catches the ball 7 yards downfield, Michael Ojemudia or whoever's right there is going to have to wrap up and make that tackle right there. Because if you don't, Stephon Diggs could be off to the races. Isaiah McKenzie, same thing. And so it also puts just a lot more pressure on your safeties. Those safeties are going to have to be playing back and just keep everything in front of you and make the tackles when they happen. Don't let Josh Allen go 50 yards in one play. Make him get 50 yards in 5-7 plays.
And the reason why you need to do that is because that sets your offense up for what you want to do. If you let them get the yards, but they're getting field goals at the end of those drives instead of touchdowns, kind of like the Kansas City game, you don't have to go away from your game plan, because on offense, guys, the game plan still has to be get the run game going, controlled passing game, long drives, dictate the tempo of the contest.
Is this Vic Fangio's toughest challenge so far this season?
No, because of the Saints game. The Saints game will always be the toughest challenge he'll ever face as a coach.
I mean defensively, though.
Yeah, and certainly not Taysom Hill in that game. Patrick Mahomes, maybe outside of the Chiefs, this is the toughest.
Right. Didn't they have Boye in that game, or did they not?
Oh, you mean not just the matchup. You mean total? Yeah,
the combination of the matchup with the personnel.
Yeah,
probably. Tougher than Atlanta because right now, with the dynamic element of Josh Allen being able to take off and run, that was the one thing that Atlanta didn't have. And as a result, the safeties, the linebackers, nobody had to spy on Matt Ryan. When he dropped back, they could concentrate on coverage. The problem is in this game is that you can focus on the coverage against him with the guys on the back end. But the problem is if you sacrifice having somebody as a spy to help out those corners in coverage, Josh Allen will take off and he'll beat you with his legs. And that's something we even saw last year. One of his biggest plays in that game was when he just took off the right side. There was no one in space and kept and started a long drive for the Bills.
Yeah, that does make that element is what's making Josh Allen so great. It's funny, it's the first thing that kind of clicked for him in the NFL is he was instantly a great running quarterback. And now he's a great running quarterback who also happens to be a great throwing quarterback. And it's making him one of the scariest quarterbacks in the league. Crazy stat about Josh Allen that was brought up on the media call several times yesterday. In the red zone, in his career, Josh Allen, 57 combined passing and rushing touchdowns, 0 combined interceptions. Well, not combined, just 0 interceptions. Unbelievable. That absolutely blew my mind. Especially
when you think of Josh Allen, a guy that hasn't been that accurate, that is turnover prone. He he does not have mistakes when he gets down there. It really, really is crazy. And one of those aspects that contributes to that, Ryan, is his ability to scramble. If he doesn't like something and it's a passing play, well, he can scramble and either open something up for an easier throw or just take off and avoid a bad situation. So that's just another reason. Keep him in the pocket and force him to make those throws, especially in the red zone that he doesn't want to make, but you can't count on that at all.
Yeah, you certainly can. I mean, if the plan is getting a turnover in the red zone, well, yeah, you're in for a bad time. Okay, let's flip over to the other side of the ball now and talk about offensively. This Bills defense is also star-studded. It also has big-time playmakers. They're also playing great football. Big challenge for Drew Lock coming off the best game of his career. What do you guys want to see the offense do to have some success against this Bills defense?
3 words: run the ball. And that's where you've got to make sure defensively the game doesn't get away from you. But Buffalo has had 4 games this year, guys, where opponents have run the ball at least half the time. And they're 1-3 in those games. So you've got to play the tempo game. Now, granted, those 3 losses, and this is the thing that kind of gives me pause here, those 3 losses are to the Chiefs, the Cardinals, and the Titans. So the Cardinals, kind of a middling team, getting that Kyler Murray Hail Mary late. The Chiefs and Titans, two of the best teams in the league. The only team that has run half the time and not beaten the Bills this year, gentlemen, was the Patriots. And they nearly did.
I mean, look at how the Broncos are built, though. You should be able to do that. You should be able to commit to the run half the time, especially with the way Melvin Gordon's playing. And we know Phillip Lindsay it definitely has it still, so not worried about that. You should be able to hand the ball off 35 times and drop back even 30 times. I mean, that could be a very easy formula for you. And so I agree with that, but something that also has to be done for the Broncos to win and also for Drew Lock is just no turnovers. And unfortunately, like we said, how this is a tough matchup on the defensive side because you're missing your cornerbacks and you're going up against a great passing attack. It's the exact same right now on the offensive side because the Buffalo Bills are top 10 team in interceptions and forcing turnovers. So this is a really tough matchup. This will be a great opportunity for Drew to show that last week wasn't a fluke because you have a lot of people saying, the Bills aren't, or the Panthers aren't that good, this and that. It was just one game. Now this is a game where he can say, nope, here's 2 in a row where I don't turn the ball over. And also it's going up against a very good defense that does turn the ball over a lot. So if he can do this game, I think that should be a lot more optimistic for people.
Yeah, I think between him and Vic Fangio, this could be a massive perception flipper type of game. I think Vic has really been on the right kind of track for the last month or so in terms of getting back some fan support with the not going for it on 4th and 3 against the Chiefs notwithstanding. Other than that, I think he's done a lot of things that make people say, okay, well, you definitely want this guy in your corner moving forward. And obviously last week was big for Drew in that regard. I think that if Vic Fangio puts together a plan with no corners to slow down Josh Allen and Drew Lock puts together a game on offense that keeps them in this game, I think it could go a really long way towards the fans starting to change their minds. The ones who are out on those guys starting to come back around.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing is, guys, Drew Lock played down, losing last week one time, and they were down 1 point. The Broncos were down 7-6 thanks to a Brandon McManus miss extra point. But it's not like the Broncos were ever down even 3 points, 7 points, 10 points. I'm curious to see what Pat Shurmur does and how Drew Lock reacts to that. Does Pat Shurmur, let's say the Bills get a 10-0 lead with 2 minutes left in the first quarter, like we've said this whole season, stick to the game plan. But does Pat Shurmur just go completely away from that and just put Drew in shotgun and just have him read the field? That's not a good formula for the Broncos to do. Or do they stick to it? And how does Drew respond if he's down a touchdown or more? Does Drew start forcing things downfield? Because he did not need to force things last week. And credit to him, he didn't. But does he feel more pressure when he gets down 7 points? And that's not crazy to say that could happen this game.
It's not crazy to say. And the thing is, that's the thing that this team hasn't faced since the philosophical pivot it made after the loss to the Raiders, because we've seen now, you throw out the Saints game, of course, we've seen now the Dolphins game, we've seen the Chiefs game, we've seen the win over Carolina. And all of those games, guys, have been one score, tight, nip and tuck. There has never been a scenario in that game, except for that final drive against Kansas City. But other than that, never a scenario where they've faced having to change the game plan because of how the game flow is going at that point. And so even though, it probably means that the Broncos are going to be in trouble, there's a part of me that wants to see how Pat Shurmur and Drew Lock react if they're looking up late in the second quarter and they're down 17-7 or something like that.
Yep.
How do they do they lose their nerve, or do they stick with it? If they stick with it, they pass the test, even though you may not necessarily win the game. They pass the test of believing in what they're doing.
Right. And Pat Shurmur is another guy who I should mention in terms of needs a little bit of a perception flipper type game. And I think sticking with the game plan and keep Drew in positions to succeed as the game goes on would go a long way in that regard. as well. This is an interesting comment from H-Town Bronco, who reminds me of something. He says, Bradley Chubb's strip sack on Allen for a nice story on that number 5 selection. Is there a little extra pressure on Bradley Chubb this week?
He probably doesn't view it that way, but boy, guys, I mean, the Broncos just straight up could have had Josh Allen, and it wouldn't have cost them extra first-round picks, wouldn't have cost them anything. It just would have cost them Bradley Chubb, who, of course, is a good player, but I think everyone right now, with Drew being a question mark, would absolutely take Josh Allen the way he's developed, especially with the situation that he's been in. Would take him over Bradley Chubb. So, yeah, certainly wouldn't that be quite a way to end the game?
Yeah, I'll contend that Broncos country would have chased Josh Allen out of town before he had a chance to become the quarterback he is now, or at least tried to. Would have been up to John Elway and company to have their faith in him hold up. But just knowing what we do now know, about Josh Allen, that he is capable of being a top 5 quarterback in the NFL this year.
Yep, that's what I'd say. I think statistically he ranks like 7th or 6th in every metric. So I guess a top 7 quarterback.
If Bradley Chubb were
top quarter.
If Bradley Chubb were to have a game-changing type of play, again, perception flippers, that's what this week is all about. That would go a long way just towards, easing some of that unrest about that pick.
Well, the other thing is Bradley Chubb here is now coming down to the last 3 games of the season, and the Broncos in the next few months are going to make the call one way or the other on whether to give Bradley Chubb the 5th-year option. Now, at least have it protected for injury, pardon me. So I think he's going to get it, even though the sack total right now, 7.5, it's not quite what you'd want in an ideal scenario, but he is being disruptive. He is getting the quarterback. He is forcing some hurried and errant throws. So I think he's on track to get that 5th-year option, but still there's that little bit of doubt, and he could end all that doubt here if he comes alive and gets, say, a sack a game over the closing stretch of this season.
Yeah, that would be really good. Top double digits. And that was his goal for this season. And typically players don't tell us their individual goals for the season. But Bradley said coming off that injury, he wanted to get to 10 sacks, and this would put him over that. Right now, I mean, just the way Vic Fangio talks about him, if Vic Fangio is back, Bradley Chubb is absolutely getting that 5th-year option. And what's crazy about Vic Fangio, let's say the Broncos take Josh Allen with that number 5 pick. Vance Joseph could very well still be the coach here because that could have bought him some time potentially. And let's say he did develop in year 2 and showed progress in year 3. Well, whatever was happening there with him, you're probably not going to change. And if you're not changing the offensive coordinator, you're probably not going to change the head coach. So, man, I mean, it could be a totally different situation here if the Broncos just made one pick different. And what's funny about that, guys, is Vance Joseph was thrilled about the Bradley Chubb pick. Maybe he'd be more thrilled in hindsight if it was Josh Allen.
Bigger thing, though, guys, if the Broncos draft Josh Allen, and let's say they have a 6-10 season in 2018, and maybe it doesn't buy Vance Joseph time, I don't think Vic Fangio is the coach of this team. I think it's an offensive coach leading this team.
Yeah, very well could be.
It should have been probably if you have, a kid like that. But again, I don't know how excited everyone would have been about Josh Allen after his rookie season if he just did exactly what he did in Buffalo.
What was it? 10 picks, 12 interceptions, a 52% completion?
Yeah, 10 touchdowns, 12 or 13.
Yeah.
And of course he had the running thing going for him, but I can just hear the snarky jokes and switch him to tight end and all the stuff that would have been going on around here.
The H-back Tim Tebow role.
You can't deny the running thing, the running ability that bought him time because you could point to something he was doing well. And even that year, 2018, there were moments where he could use his legs to really discombobulate a defense. Now, what's interesting is that he doesn't run as effectively in terms of yards per carry as he did as a rookie. Like he's down to 3.8 yards per attempt. He was 7.1 yards per attempt as a rookie, but he's running judiciously, and it's evidenced in the fact that he has 6 touchdowns this year. I'd be surprised if he doesn't get another touchdown or 2 on the ground the rest of the way, which would put him right where he was in rushing touchdowns in his first 2 years in the league. He doesn't have to use that tool as often as he did, but it's still there.
Yeah, it's still there, and they use it more down in the red zone, which makes sense. It makes them more multiple down there and harder to defend.
And that affects the per carry average as well, because he's not as liable to take off and have a 25 or 30-yard burst. Most of the time in the red zone, when he's taking off and running, it's toward the end zone. It's a nice, like a 6-yard scramble for a score.
Yeah, and obviously the Drew Lock comparisons have been made just all week because of the fact that, Josh Allen struggled early, showed some flashes, put it all together. The one thing that I will say, if you're, trying to make that comp, should make you feel better, is that Josh Allen fixed his decision making. And going back to as recently as the playoffs of last year, I can't even remember who did they play? They lost to.
And they play Houston.
He made some mind-bogglingly bad mistakes in that game, just trying to do too much. And he has really calmed down this year. And just stopped trying to force plays. But I mean, like I said, as recently as last year, people were losing their minds over, like how dumb he was being in that game. But he had a good game, but he was making some just awful decisions.
Well, and the encouraging thing for the Broncos is he still does make some boneheaded decisions now. Now, 28 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, you'll take that in a heartbeat. But in 13 games, 9 interceptions isn't like he's mistake-free, so the Broncos could capitalize on that. It could be a Devontae Bosby coming up with a big-time play, or it could be your leading interception guy, Justin Simmons, coming up with a big play.
Could be. So it's going to be interesting. I'm excited for this game. I'm excited to watch Josh Allen play. I'm excited to see what Vic Fangio has up his sleeve because, like I said yesterday, Vic Fangio made things more difficult on Justin Herbert than most people have. He's made things more difficult on Patrick Mahomes than most people have. He made things really difficult on Tua Tagovailoa. So you assume he's going to have something in the bag to make things difficult on Josh Allen. And obviously everyone wants to see how Drew Lock is going to do. We're going to give our predictions for the game on the podcast side of things. So if you want to hear that, go download the DNVR Broncos podcast. Anywhere you get podcasts, you'll hear our predictions. You'll hear all of the questions from our members, and you can become a member too if you go to thednvr.com and sign up. Of course, hit us with a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube and you enjoyed the show. We always appreciate that. But for now, on the live side of things, we're going to check out, so we'll talk to you guys later.